First of all, think that the people who should decide how this country is run are the British people. I apply that as much to Elon Musk as I would apply it to Vladimir Putin, who I think historically has interfered in our elections in the past as well.
In a single night, Labour MP Chris Bryant managed to undermine years of his party's carefully crafted image. His fumbling attempts to address the grooming gang scandal on BBC Question Time left viewers aghast. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great. Thank you so much. Now, back to the video. Bryant's condemnation of Elon Musk's comments backfired spectacularly when confronted with Labour's own history of foreign interference.
Or Barack Obama when he undermined the case for Brexit, Chris?
Well, actually, I think that on the whole...
Are we not allowed opinions on other countries?
Well,
as the debate unfolded, it became clear that this was more than just a bad night for Bryant. It was a potential turning point in British politics. Chris Bryant, a Labour MP known for his political acumen, found himself in the hot seat during a recent appearance on BBC's Question Time. What should have been a routine debate turned into a night of contradictions and embarrassment for the seasoned politician. As Bryant stepped onto the stage, exuding his usual confidence, little did he know that his arguments would soon crumble under the weight of scrutiny. The tension in the studio began to rise as Bryant boldly condemned Elon Musk's comments on the grooming gang scandal. With an air of indignation, he declared, "The people who should decide how this country is run are the British people, not anybody else." It was a statement that initially resonated with the audience, appealing to their sense of national sovereignty. However, the tides quickly turned against Bryant, as his own words came back to haunt him. In a moment of poetic justice, Bryant's argument was swiftly undermined when he was confronted with Labour's own history of foreign interference in politics. The audience watched in disbelief as the MP struggled to reconcile his party's past attempts to influence US elections with his current stance on foreign meddling. The hypocrisy was palpable, and Bryant's credibility began to unravel faster than a poorly knitted sweater. As the debate progressed, the audience's reaction shifted dramatically. What started as attentive listening turned into a mix of incredulity and disbelief. Bryant's attempts to defend Labour's position on the grooming gang issue became increasingly desperate, each justification more incredulous than the last. It was like watching a magician perform a disappearing act, only to realize that the only thing vanishing was Bryant's political integrity. In a futile attempt to salvage his position, Bryant dug himself deeper into a hole of contradictions. His explanations became more convoluted, his arguments more tenuous. It was as if he was trying to build a castle on quicksand, each word sinking him further into the mire of political embarrassment. As the dust settled on what can only be described as a PR disaster for Bryant and the Labour Party, the extent of the damage became clear. Social media exploded with critical responses, commentators gleefully highlighting the contradictions in his arguments. The once respected MP had become a cautionary tale of how quickly political fortunes can change when faced with uncomfortable truths. As the dust settles on Bryant's disastrous performance, a deeper, more troubling question emerges. Why is Labour so adamantly opposed to a national inquiry into grooming gangs? Their resistance has raised eyebrows across the political spectrum, leaving many to wonder what skeletons might be lurking in Labour's closet. The public demand for a comprehensive investigation into grooming gangs has been growing steadily, fueled by the horrific revelations from places like Rotherham, Rochdale, and Telford. These aren't isolated incidents, but rather a pattern of systematic abuse that has affected thousands of victims over decades. The sheer scale of the problem is staggering. In Rotherham alone, 400 children were sexually abused over 16 years, primarily by British Pakistani men. Telford's story is equally shocking, with up to 1,000 girls facing abuse over 40 years. Given the severity and scope of these crimes, one might expect Labour to be at the forefront of calls for a national inquiry. Instead, they've taken a surprisingly defensive stance. Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy has flatly rejected the idea, arguing that the previous inquiry, led by Professor Alexis Jay in 2022, had already addressed many of the issues. Labour ministers insist that implementing the recommendations from that inquiry should take priority over launching a new investigation.
She announced yesterday was a review of the existing evidence, because we know that there are evidence gaps. We need to make sure that we're collecting proper data on things like ethnicity, so that we really fully understand the pattern of behaviour and the drivers that are contributing to this horrendous phenomenon that we've seen in many, many towns across the UK.
But does this explanation hold water? Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch doesn't think so. She's accused Labour of failing to hold themselves accountable to the victims of grooming gangs. It's a damning charge, and one that's gaining traction as more people question Labour's motives.
MPs to vote against a national inquiry into the gangs which have systematically gang-raped children in their constituency.
So what's really behind Labour's reluctance? Some speculate that it's a case of political self-preservation. The independent inquiry into child sexual abuse, CSA, concluded in October 2022 with some uncomfortable findings. It suggested that young girls were often not believed due to their age, gender, and socio-economic status. Even more damning, it found that institutions often prioritized their own protection over that of the victims. Could Labour be worried about what a national inquiry might uncover about their own past actions or inactions? The case of Telford is particularly telling. Reports suggest that some cases were overlooked due to nervousness about race, as most suspects were men of South Asian heritage. This raises uncomfortable questions about political correctness and its potential role in allowing these crimes to continue unchecked. As pressure mounts, Labour's position is looking increasingly untenable. The party that once prided itself on standing up for the vulnerable now finds itself accused of abandoning the victims of some of the most heinous crimes imaginable. How long can they maintain this stance in the face of growing public outrage? Chris Bryant's appearance on Question Time has become a watershed moment for Labour's credibility on the grooming gang issue. The party's refusal to support a national inquiry has left voters increasingly disillusioned. Recent polling paints a damning picture, with a majority of the public demanding a comprehensive investigation into this sensitive matter. Labour's stance appears increasingly out of touch with public sentiment, raising questions about their commitment to transparency and accountability. As the debate rages on, Labour finds itself in a precarious position. The growing chorus of voices calling for a national inquiry is impossible to ignore. Will the party be forced to reconsider its stance? Or will they double down, risking further erosion of public trust? The coming weeks will be crucial for Labour as they navigate this political minefield. One thing is clear: the British public's patience is wearing thin, and they expect their elected officials to take decisive action on this critical issue.